Okay, welcome everybody. I know we had to cancel the last webinar that was scheduled because I had a scheduling conflict. I was actually out of town. Um, I'm out of town now too, but the show must go on. And we're going to talk about a little different subject today than our normal building and construction and real estate stuff. Although it's connected to buildings and a lot of condos. The subject is expert witness premises liability, understanding trip and fall, slip and fall, and case studies. So let me go through these slides here real fast. Okay, so premises liability, premises is like buildings and grounds kind of situation. And trip and fall is when somebody trips and falls and gets injured. They're tripping over something. Okay. And then the slip and fall is a person gets injured from slipping, like a slippery sidewalk or um, too much oil and things like that. The tripping part could be a lifted, cracked sidewalk or tree roots or things like that. So let's get right into it. So what exactly is premises liability? In the legal context and the relevance, why it matters, the impact of premises liability on property owners and the legal obligations to mitigate risk. So any property owner could be a target for a lawsuit if someone gets injured. And not only the property owner, the management too, management company, site manager, resident manager, general manager. So you have all these people that would be in charge of a certain piece of property in the repair and management of that property, as well as the owners. There's a liability. The application to real estate or real property, why it's relevant, it involves owners, managers, tenants, contractors who would work in common locations like commercial spaces, residential complexes, public facilities. So basically, it doesn't matter the location, whether it's inside hotel rooms or condo units or outside a shopping center or hotel building or the building itself. They're all subjects, locations that could be problematic. Now we're talking about slip and fall hazards right now, common premises liability issues. What are the causes for a slip and fall condition? It could be a wet floor, either by a leak, a plumbing leak or roof leak, or a wet floor because somebody just mopped the floor, okay, and too much water, or somebody spilled something on the floor. Maybe in a grocery store, your chill refrigerator uh, is draining water onto a floor and a shopper, slips. Or it could be a plumbing leak somewhere. Also, oily surfaces. I noticed that in quite a few restaurants that I go to, and I try not to eat a lot, but just so happen I go to these restaurants and mostly fast food restaurants I notice, right? Not because I tend to eat at more fast food places than regular restaurants, sit down. Um, the fast food restaurants, they do a lot of cleaning, right, of the floors. And I noticed that somehow they don't rinse their mop out as many times as they should. or they don't use enough soap or whatever detergent, because what happens is they're mopping the whole floor and they're spreading this thin grease film on the floor, and it could be like their main restaurant area. It could be a hallway. It could be even in a restroom. And I don't want to name any names, but I noticed that um, a lot of the oily surfaces happen to be at McDonald's and Jack in a Box. You know, I'm not saying I go to these places a lot, but maybe I'll stop in for a drink or something because I'm always on the road driving around. But that's something to be aware of, because these fast food places, they have to make sure that their mop is clean. What happens is if they mop something that's oily and they don't clean their mop, now they're spreading the oil over the entire restaurant. Okay. Next is weather-related hazards. It could be a wet road, or it could be it rained a lot and now your sidewalk or walkway's wet. Tracking water, and this is pretty common. You have a nice hotel, marble floors and all that. It's raining outside, and people are coming in, and with their wet shoes or wet clothes, shaking out their umbrella, and so the interior entry is smooth already, and now when it's wet, it becomes a slip hazard. And I consider this also a weather related hazard because they're coming in from the outside when it's wet. So uh, the what the hotel needs to do is provide mats and towels and uh, have somebody mop up the wet areas on the floor and put signage, a lot of signage, wet area, caution, that kind of thing. The other causes of a slip and fall condition would be insufficient signage in high traffic areas. So not enough signage saying, keep out, wet, be aware, caution, that kind of thing. So if you don't see these areas and the floor is wet, a lot of times I tell the manager or a worker, hey, I noticed someone spilled coffee over here, or soda, should be mopped up. And if they don't have anybody to mop it up right away, at least have somebody put a sign over the area or block it with chairs or a table or something so people don't automatically, they're not aware and they slip and get hurt. Okay, here's an example. A grocery store fails to place a caution wet floor sign after rainwater accumulates at the entrance, leading to a customer slipping and breaking her wrist. Okay, so these grocery stores and hotels and all these other areas where you have public coming in, especially when it rains and you know it's wet out there, you gotta check your entry to your store. You gotta walk around and make sure that there's no wet areas where people can slip and fall. That's a key component, because an attorney in a lawsuit is going to bring up negligence. You were negligent because you didn't walk around and look. You're negligent because you saw it was wet and you didn't have any of your workers mitigate the problem by mopping it up or putting a floor wet sign or anything like that. So these are just things to be aware of. There's no expectation for a shopper to enter a grocery store or hotel and slip, right? Or expectation for that hotel guest to be looking on the ground at the floor to see if there's water there or something, right? So the expectation is it's going to be clean and safe. Okay, so slide number 2, we're talking about a trip and fall case as opposed to a slip and fall that I just mentioned. In both types, people can get injured, seriously injured, either tripping or slipping. Okay, so we're talking about tripping now. What's the causes of a trip hazard or a trip kind of situation? Uneven flooring, well, you have a section of the floor lifted up, or you have carpet that's loose, and you can trip over that. Poor lighting, where people can't really see. It's so dim that they can't see what's in front of them, and they're taking their chances if they trip over loose carpet or there's uneven floor that they can't tell. And the flooring, it could be uneven because the tile wasn't laid properly, right, in the first place. Or maybe the foundation has some cracks and just certain sections are lifted up. When we talk about sidewalks or walkways on the exterior, there could be tree roots or soil settlement where there's cracking and now there's uneven areas. Here's a case example. You have somebody, could be an office worker in an office building, walks outside, um, carrying his hot coffee. So a cracked sidewalk outside of an office building causes an employee carrying coffee to trip, sprain their ankle, and sustain minor burns, resulting in a liability claim. Now, double jeopardy because the person um, tripped and sprained their ankle, and then they also got burned from the hot coffee. Okay, so it's like, what injury is more severe, the sprained ankle or the hot coffee burn? Common premises liability issues are attributed to inadequate repair and maintenance. So in this category, the causes could be delayed repairs. Maybe they're waiting for a part. Maybe they just have too much to do and they can't finish things in a timely manner on their repair list. Maybe they don't even know it's broken because no one did an inspection. Okay, so one of the causes is lack of regular inspections. So if you don't do inspections of your building, how do you know what could or may be a problem or is a problem? Okay, so if you don't know what the problem is, then there's no repair. If you know what the problem is and don't fix it, then it's a delayed repair. And then, the common excuse, right, would be we don't have the money to fix it. We don't have money to repair these rotten decks. We don't have money to fix the hand railing that's loose. Now, is that a consideration when there's a lawsuit, when somebody gets hurt? That's a reason and an excuse, but that doesn't cut it because the person that gets hurt, their attorney is going to say, it doesn't matter whether you had the money or not, your obligation was to fix it or put a notice, don't use this. Like if the escalator doesn't work properly, um, and you just don't put a notice or close it, right? And someone gets hurt, it's going to be your fault, right? So here's a case example. Poorly lit stairwells in an apartment complex led to a visitor falling and fracturing her hip because the property manager delayed replacing burnt out bulbs. Okay, now here's a situation where this person that got hurt doesn't even live at the apartment complex. Okay, they're not a resident, they're not an employee, they're a visitor, and they tripped, fell down the stairs, and got hurt. Now, can this person still sue because they don't live there? They don't work there? They just, came to visit? Of course they can. Now, were they an invited guest, or was this person just like wandering around, not invited, happened to go in and fall and get hurt? In that case, could they still sue and win? The answer is yes. Okay, so be careful. It's a very litigious world out there. Anybody can sue anybody for anything. Let's talk about standard of care and premises liability. There's standard of care means that there's certain rules and regulations regarding doing certain things. And the standard of care is what is the standard practice? What is the norm? What is industry standard regarding maintaining a building? Well, you got inspection and maintenance. Somebody should be inspecting, maintaining, check your high traffic areas, check your hand railing, your lighting, your flooring, your decking. Um, where there's high traffic, you want to make sure that everything's clean. There's no slippery areas where people can get hurt. So the real life applications is you got to be proactive as a building owner and manager, proactive to repair your cracked sidewalks, replace burnout light bulbs and stairwells, apply non-slip coatings to floors in high traffic zones, things like that. Now, I'm talking about commercial property, okay, as well as residential. But for single family homes, all the same things still apply. You still need to maintain your handrails, make sure your lighting is correct, review your flooring. You know, what about you go to someone's house and they need to change the carpet and their carpet is all bunched up and, it's a trip hazard. So it's not a good situation. Okay, who's responsible for maintaining property? The primary person is responsible is the owner, right? Secondary, the owner hires managers, property managers, site managers, resident managers, general managers, someone who's managing the property. So the owner expects the manager to do all these things, regular inspections, scheduling repairs, address potential hazards promptly, and ensuring staff are all trained in safety protocols. Not only your repair and maintenance people, but your landscaping people, your janitorial people, your security people. Everybody got to be trained the same way. Not to say that your security guard is going to be fixing your loose railing, but the security guard should be aware that there is a loose railing, write it up in his report, and make sure that someone addresses it, right? Not just looking at it, oh, that's not my job, so I'm not even gonna write it in my report or even notify anybody. So in a case of like a condominium building, every single worker has the same job for safety, reporting conditions that need to be fixed. Everybody, it doesn't matter what position you're in. You're all required to raise the issue, raise a red flag if something needs to be fixed. The problem is people don't think it's their job to report it and doesn't get reported, and then someone gets hurt. The consequences of negligence, how neglecting maintenance or failing to update safety features increase accident risk and liability. Yes, the more negligent people are, and it could be many different people in the same building, right? Not fixing something that caused a problem, caused somebody to get hurt. If someone can get hurt on your premises, in your building, at your hotel, shopping center, condominium building, right? If there's a condition that causes somebody to get hurt, that's negligence already because the standard of care is not met. The standard of care was below the industry standard bar. So let's talk about like the legal process in the expert witness role. Okay, what does this expert witness do in situations like this when that person gets called upon to render an opinion or look at a building or look at a location where someone got hurt? Okay, and the location could be anywhere. It could be a building, it could be a parking lot, it could be a highway, a forest, a beach, practically any place. So the expert witness role in litigation is to do research, uncover the facts, and report on the truth. Okay, so the role in litigation, technical clarification and case validation. What that means is there a case or not, right? Is it a situation where it's worth pursuing a lawsuit, or maybe the person got injured, just takes a check from the insurance company as a settlement? Why it's needed, why an expert witness is needed in the first place? Well, to strengthen the claim or defenses of one party or the other, and then demonstrating negligence, got to provide information. So, an expert witness in a certain case, the contributions would be uh, through analysis, a site assessment, hazard identification, visual inspection, documentation and reporting, evaluating maintenance practices. Okay, so for example, someone falls down on a stairway. Okay, why? Well, the hand railing was loose. So the expert would go out, do a visual inspection, take pictures, measure uh, certain things, take reporting documentation, is write out a report and then evaluate the maintenance practices. Like, when was the last time anybody inspected this situation, this location? What is the norm? What is the general practice of this building or this property with respect to inspection protocol? When was the last inspection done? And if so, um, what was written in the report? Okay. Also, what contributed to the railing being loose? Was it rust and corrosion? Did somebody hit it and it got damaged? We want to know these things. Now, in a rust and corrosion situation, it would be obvious that the rust just didn't happen overnight. So if it was rusted and corroded and the railing came loose because of the corrosion, that's going to be a negligent thing. Like, why did anybody fix it earlier? Because the rust just didn't grow on the railing overnight. And then impact on case outcomes. If it's a jury trial, does it influence on jury perception based on what the expert report stated? Also, the expert's report may lead to a settlement. And then the expert has to have credibility and authority because his report is going to be scrutinized by everybody, both attorneys on either side. If it's a jury trial, the judge would read it, insurance companies would read it and scrutinize it. Investigation techniques and premises liability. So we're talking about inspection and analysis methods. Visual inspection is done first, along with information gathering. Like, before I would go out to a property, I would want all the information ahead of time. What happened, copy of the accident report. Did the person who got injured end up in the hospital? Who attended to them? What did the building do? Do they just do nothing? Or maybe the building personnel were the ones that called the 911 emergency. We got to get all the information on what happened in the beginning, and that led to the accident and what happened after the accident. So the visual inspection is non-intrusive examination for signs of wear, damage, hazards. For example, cracked tiles, floor tiles, loose hand railing, things like that. And then a detailed analysis identifying underlying issues such as structural damage or inadequate design. If the person got injured because it was poor design of the building or structural damage, then that's something that we want to know, okay? Because our report's going to be based on all the evidence that was gathered. Evidence collection techniques, documentation, like I mentioned before. We're going to take our own pictures, photographic evidence. We may take videos. We're going to measure things, measurements of hazards, such as how high the handrail was, how long the handrail was, where was the handrail attached? Was it surface mounted? Was it embedded in the wall? Um, was it stable? What kind of hand railing was it? Um, Material, was it vinyl? Was it wood? Was it metal? And then mapping the area for context. So we would kind of measure things and, map out the area. And then also would also measure the stairs, okay? Because we want to know whether the stairs were a hazard. And maybe the stairs weren't following the building code, and that contributed to the person perhaps tripping, grabbing on the handrail that became loose. Okay? So we want all this information. What tools or technology do we use, right? Inspection tools, measuring devices like a tape measure, or we have a roller that we can use to measure long distances, and then techniques such as drone surveillance in large properties. If it's a large property, we may end up having to send a drone there, and then we may want to talk to people, right, as part of our evidence. So let's say we gather all this evidence and we're ready to prepare a report. So what we're going to do is write a report and detail everything out. And we're going to also write a summary of findings. And the summary would consist of key hazards, locations, measurements, and pictures. Okay, we'll all put it together in a easy to read format. Okay, and then in addition to that, okay, we're going to offer our professional opinion. And our opinion is going to be based on documented evidence. So I would analyze whether the property met the standard of care requirements. Okay. Now, older buildings, it's quite easy to say that this handrail did not meet today's building code. Okay, does it have to be? No, it doesn't. Okay, it's grandfathered in. But did it have to be repaired? If the answer is yes, then that's a bad sign for the property, right? If it needed to be maintained, that's also a bad thing for the property owner and that side. So those are some things to be aware of and to consider. Moving right along, we have some case studies. There was a slip and fall accident at the International Marketplace, and it's not the new International Marketplace, it was the old one. Okay, the old one got torn down in order to rebuild the new one. So just to give you an idea, there was this big area of concrete, and they had a stage, and they used to, use that area for shows. So they used to have music and hula dancing and all that on stage. And the big concrete area, they used to have chairs for people to sit to watch the show. Well, at the time of the accident, this tourist, this lady, was walking through that area, and there was the weather condition, there was slight rain, and not full on flooding or anything. And the lady was in a rush, and so she wasn't like walking real slow, and she slipped and fell and got seriously injured, so serious that the ambulance had to come take her to ER, and she was in ER for I don't know how many days. And when she got released, she had some permanent life injuries. Okay, so she hired an attorney who sued the international marketplace owner, as well as everyone involved in, or everyone that could possibly be involved. So the people that got sued were the owner of the shopping place, the manager of the shopping place, the general manager, property manager, site manager, okay? The maintenance company was involved. The security guard was involved. Anybody who had anything to do with the international marketplace was named. And that's what they do. They name everybody and everybody that they could. And one by one, each party has to come to the table and say, we're not involved. We're not a party to this lawsuit because we have nothing to do with the person slipping. We're a security company, or we're the cleaning company. Okay, but the courts have to say whether these parties are involved or not. Now, you would think that, well, this lady got hurt because it was bare concrete and she was wearing flip-flops, right? That's what they call it. We call it slippers in Hawaii. Okay. So she slipped because she was wearing slippers and the ground was wet and she was like walking fast. So we're not liable. Why should we be liable because the person is not wearing the proper shoes or footwear and they got injured? Now, if it's raining and it's wet, wouldn't you think someone would be walking slow to avoid not slipping? Okay, so you would think, wow, yeah, they have a good case, man. I think the lady that got hurt has no right to sue because it's her fault. Okay, I got hired by the attorneys that represented the lady. So here's what I discovered. The concrete was bare concrete. They had all these little divots, like holes in the concrete that weren't filled in. And the concrete was bare. There was no waterproofing or anything on the surface. So when it gets wet, well, naturally it's kind of slippery, right? The other thing is there's no expectation for somebody who's on vacation and a tourist to be wearing, construction steel-toed boots and all that when they're walking around international marketplace. So it's okay for a tourist to be wearing flip-flops or slippers. That's what they wear when they come to Hawaii. Okay. So that's another point. The other point is that I walked around the other areas of the shopping center, and there was some newer areas that had waterproofing with aggregate coating on it. Aggregate coating is like sand. It's non-slippery. So why would they have that coating in another area of the shopping center and not in this area? Right? So it's inconsistent repair and maintenance in my opinion, right? So I went to do another inspection, my second inspection, and there were like 10 people there, 5 attorneys, insurance company, everybody, like the security, the cleaning company, maintenance company, they all had their own attorneys there. They hired a guy who was taking pictures of me doing my inspection, and they hired another guy taking a video. I mean, it was hilarious. So every time I would stop, look at something, maybe measure it or take my own picture, they would be taking a picture of me doing my inspection. And it took like 4 hours. It was kind of ridiculous. And in the beginning, the photographer came up to me and said, "Oh, can I ask what you're doing? What you're looking at?" And I said, "No, I'm not talking to you. I have no obligation to talk to And these people were hired by the opposing side, right? So what happened was based on my write-up and everything, there was a settlement. I can't tell you the amount that it got settled. I can't tell you, if anybody admitted guilt or not. But usually in a settlement agreement, both parties agree that they're not the guilty party. They're saying that um, there's no guilt and we're not blaming anybody. We're not taking the blame ourselves. And then there's a clause in the contract, in the settlement agreement that says uh, there's a confidentiality clause. What that means is that either party cannot, or both parties cannot tell a third party outside of, the parties in agreement that there was a settlement, what the settlement was for, what the amount was, and if anybody said they were guilty or not. Okay, so it's like there's like a built-in gag order in the documentation. Now you must think, wow, if there was a confidentiality clause in the agreement, what am I doing blabbing over what happened, right? Um, I could get sued for doing that, right? But the answer is no. You know why? Because I was not a party to that settlement agreement. I was an expert witness. So as an expert witness, I can go around telling people, right? So if I didn't tell you these things, you wouldn't know about it. So I'm free to say what I want. Let's talk about another case. This is a bigger one. Alamana Shopping Center case. It involved a railing collapse. One person died and another seriously injured for life. And the situation here is that the shopping center said these two people were fooling around, they're horseplaying, running around, pushing each other, and that's the reason why the railing collapsed and both of them fell. They fell like 3 stories. Okay. Um, but was that true or not? Right? You must think, well, maybe if that was the case, maybe the shopping center wouldn't be liable, but investigation showed that there was corrosion on the railing. And I had I had pictures showing lack of maintenance, and that's what was needed because the lawsuit said the negligence of the shopping center was because the lack of maintenance in repairing or maintaining the railing, and it was corroded that caused it to collapse. And the attorney on my side, right, that represented the two people that got injured, said, "How is it that did you know that the railing was going to collapse?" And I said, "No." And they said, "Well, why do you have these pictures of corroded railing and concrete cracks and all that at the shopping center from, you know, around the time of the accident to like 10 years prior?" And they were kind of confused. And I told them, based on the work I do, when I walk around and go to places, I take pictures if I see stuff. So I'm either going to Ala Moana Shopping Center for a meeting, or I'm going there to buy something. I park in a parking lot, and as I'm walking, I'm looking at cracks in the parking deck. I'm looking at railing that's corroded. I take pictures and I put it on Facebook. And I put it on Facebook and I put a caption. What do you see wrong in this photo? Right? Or do you see anything wrong here? And then, people respond like it's a game. So that's how I ended up getting 10 years of photos of Ala Moana Shopping Center. And the photos were used to help in the settlement because it proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that, hey, look, there's corrosion here, there's concrete spalling here. Why is the rebar showing in the, parking? How come the railing is so corroded? They painted over the corrosion, right? That's not the right thing to do. And then further, to prove the point, and it was an election year, right? So the building department issued a citation, which is called an NOV, Notice of Violation, to the shopping center. And what it said was there was an accident, and the accident was caused by concrete spalling and corroded railing. And basically, with that one-page document, just hand it over to the shopping center and say, look, I don't care what you say, right? If you maintained it or not. This is a letter from the city building department, the department that has jurisdiction over buildings in Hawaii. And they're saying that you guys failed. So you're going to argue with them? So there was no argument, right? So the Alamona Shopping Center wrote back a letter to the building department saying, we're going to fix the railing, we're going to do concrete repair, we're going to do this, do that, right? They were kind of trapped. They couldn't get away from it. So the takeaway here is once the building department says that there's a code violation, right? The property is basically not in a good position. It's hard to argue. You can't say no, that wasn't the case. Guys, a bunch of liars. You're trying to go after us. I don't know what kind of reason you have, but that's what's happening, right? That's what happened. And then after that, a couple years later, there was a Kalihi apartment building collapse where the entire railing, which is made out of block tile, had fallen over due to lack of repair and maintenance. And two guys got hurt, right? They didn't get badly hurt, but they fell like from the second floor, I think. And I got called to go visit the property, and there was all this rubble and concrete dust and broken bricks and pieces of rebar on the ground. And I could see red splotches. The red splotches were one of the guy's blood when he fell down and got injured. And it wasn't cleaned up at the time. So, it's not a good sight to see. And so the bottom line is you building owners and managers, you got to maintain your property to prevent yourself from getting involved in a lawsuit. Condominium associations, condo boards, you got to do the same thing, right? And if you live in a condo and if you see something, report it. Don't be hesitant to send an email to the property manager or the board directly and saying, I noticed this is a problem and I want to know when you're going to fix it. I noticed this is a problem. I saw, I was sitting outside by the park and it was windy and I saw this huge tree branch. I heard crackling sounds and all that. I think you guys should look into it, right? Don't be hesitant. You're paying money and you should demand that things be fixed, because guess what? If there's a lawsuit, you're going to end up paying, right? Everyone's going to end up paying. Lessons learned: patterns in liability cases, inadequate signage that fails to warn visitors of hazards, delays in addressing necessary repairs and despite obvious risks. This is so critical, especially in condo buildings, delays in addressing repairs. You look at your reserve study. Are you guys following your reserve study? Is there a lack of repairs in certain areas? You get kicking the can down the road. Why? Because you don't have money? Well, believe it or not, the condo state law, there's no exemption. If the condo association doesn't have any money, there's no exemption that allows them to not fix the problem. You're obligated to fix the problem no matter what. Okay, overlook maintenance issues like uneven flooring or poor lighting. Guys got to pay attention to these things. Preventative takeaways. Here's some lessons learned. Conduct your routine inspections of high traffic and hazard prone areas. You got to do your inspections. I don't care who does it and when it's done. You don't do one inspection every year. Certain things you want to inspect every day, once a week, once a month, right? You want to have those reports and don't accept, yeah, I did the inspection, okay, from one of the workers. You want to have a written report done, signed by whoever did the inspection and filed. Because if there's a lawsuit, somebody gets hurt and I get hired, I'm going to come in and I'm going to ask. I want copies of all the reports. And if there's none, right, the building manager is not going to be in a good position. Ensuring immediate response to identified risks. If there's a risk, you got to fix it right away, right? Concrete spalling. Somebody's going to get hurt. A piece of concrete's going to fall down, right? You don't want to let it go for year after year. If you know your cast iron piping is leaking, there's a lot of flooding, right? You want to fix it as soon as you can. Installing and maintaining clear visible signage, right? If there's an area that's unsafe, you want to put signage up right away. Don't expect people to read your mind and know what the problem is, okay? All right, here's a question. Potholes in a parking lot, is this a liability? Yes or no? Okay, right, it's yes. If somebody like starts walking from their car to a building, breaks their ankle in a pothole, right? You think they can sue and win? Yes, because there shouldn't be any potholes, okay? How about the sidewalk, right? It got raised up because of a tree root and somebody trips and gets hurt, honks their head, right? Is that a liability? Yes, it is. Can somebody sue and win? Yes, because that should have been fixed. Uneven walkway, right? Do a tree root. Yeah, it's pretty obvious. A loose handrail, that should be done. If you have a corroded railing, should the railing be corroded? No, the railing, when you go and buy a new railing, it doesn't come corroded. So if it got corroded in the past, you need to pay attention and fix it. Conclusion from the expert. Get all these things repaired, get it fixed, do your proper inspection. I'm going to breeze through these things. But what you missed, we've done plenty of webinars before on building and construction things. You go to our website, watch the webinar for free. What's coming up? We got a lot of different topics coming up, talking about corrosion, other expert witness stuff, other building related issues, construction related topics. We got stuff on condos. We'll talk about real estate things also. You visit our website, askbuildingexpert.now, that site that has a lot of information. We got webinars you can watch for free. We got PowerPoints that you can get. We have many expert websites you can go to for each different topic, like fire, life safety, painting, roofing, asphalt, contractor licensing. We got 2 about the Lahaina fire, how to work with a contractor. You know, there's a lot of good stuff there. It's all free. We got interesting blogs that are all free too, that could help you. And then, like I mentioned, we got webinars. So take a look at our previous webinars and then sign up for future ones. Books, we got a bunch of books that you can get. Some of them are free, some are not free. If you subscribe to our newsletter, we produce 1 book a month that you can get free, a free download for 30 days. After that, it goes back for sale on Amazon. Okay, but take advantage. It's good stuff. Each book you can read in less than an hour. And there's big print because Martin and I are getting old and, you know, our eyes are not as good as they were when we were young. So we need to read the Reader's Digest version. That's why our books are fine print, larger print, easy to read. There's no like engineering terms or you're gonna get confused because you don't understand something. You know, it's easy. You can read it in less than an hour. Okay, so you got questions, we got answers. My name's up here, Lance Luke, my phone number, email lanceluke@hawaiibuildingexpert.com. And we're broadcasting simultaneously on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. So if you have any questions on the platforms, please post them and we'll get to them. We'll answer them as soon as we can. If you're on a Zoom platform, thank you for registering. If you have any questions or comments, you can post it in the chat or Q&A. But I'm going to turn it over to Martin. We got a little time for some Q&A, so let's see if we can help people who may have some questions about this interesting topic. So, Martin.
Yes, Lance. We had a couple come in a little bit earlier. Let me give you the first one here. They're asking, in your experience, what aspects of premises liability are most critical to investigate thoroughly as an expert witness?
Well, I would say there's not one. Um, all of them are just as important as the other. Now, there's some that are some cases are, I wouldn't say more important, but more critical, um, just because of the nature of the outcome of the accident. Like if somebody dies because they fell and hit their head, um, that may be more critical than somebody that tripped and fell and they broke their wrist because their wrist can heal. So, but as an expert witness, the witness has to treat each case the same way, right? The investigation has to be treated the same way. The request for documentation has to be treated the same way, no matter what. And the report has to be written telling the truth. Now, although I like to throw this in, although I'm hired as an expert witness to represent one side, I cannot be biased. I have to tell the truth. So, in my opinion, if I don't agree with something, even if it's not in agreement with my client's side, I still have to say it, because although we're getting paid by one party, we have to be impartial. Our job is to tell the truth. Our job is to be honest, and our job is to just state the facts based on research of the evidence, and not, make stuff up just because, we represent one side as opposed to the other. Okay, so hopefully that answered that question.
That's a good answer, Lance. Thank you. The next question that came in is asking, how do you handle cases where there's limited evidence available, such as missing maintenance records or no clear documentation of prior hazards, things that you mentioned?
It's a lot more difficult, right? If there's no documentation, no records, but we try and find records through other sources. So let's say the building has no records to turn over. We go to the building department and we see what records they have. We go to the tax office to see what records they have. We try and get records from um, other sources, right? Sometimes it's hard when there's nothing to go by. There's no previous documentation. So we just have to go by, what's there and what we see. And if a party thinks that if they throw away reports and all that, it's to their benefit, that may not be true, right? Because if they have reports showing that they did maintenance, that's better, right? If they have no reports, or they have reports that show no repair or maintenance or no inspections, that's not a good thing either. So the best thing to do is preserve whatever documentation is there, because it can be used in the case. So sometimes, let's say, for example, there's no documentation at all. I go there and take a look at a corroded railing. I just have to write my report and say it doesn't look like there was any maintenance done for a while. And if the building doesn't have any reports, they cannot refute what I'm saying. They can't say, oh, you're not telling the truth. Look, here's reports showing that we did maintain it, right? So that's the reason why buildings should preserve all their records. No matter if you think it's not of consequence, you never know when it's going to be needed.
Very good. Thank you, Lance. That's excellent guidelines for all our property owners. The last question that's come in here, I don't see any others right now, is could you share any other examples where your findings as an expert witness changed the course of a case, perhaps leading to an out-of-court settlement? You've talked about that, or a shift in liability determination.
I mentioned those cases. I got some other cases where there was one in Waikiki at a Waikiki hotel condo, and it involved a slip and fall. A lady was going to take a shower, and she turned the water on, and then she realized that she didn't have any soap, so she left the bathroom to get her soap. When she came back, she slipped in the bathroom because the drain was clogged and it flooded her bathroom. And water is clear, right? So um, the bathroom floor was tile, and when the water was over the tile, you couldn't see that it was water because it was clear. So in her testimony, she said that she couldn't see the water, and then she just went in there and slipped. Now, it was a slip and fall case, okay, but it involved the building not replacing their cast iron drain pipes. And when their cast iron drain pipes got clogged, that clogged the drain in her particular hotel room, the shower, and that caused the leak. I mean, the flooding, and the flooding caused her to slip and fall and hit her head. That's the problem when you keep going and tracing the causes of the situation. So in this situation, I had to request reserve study documentation and reports from the resident manager and the maintenance department of how many times they had to how many times it was reported that other hotel rooms drains was clogged, and what did the hotel do about it? The hotel surely didn't replace all the cast iron piping, so maybe there was a snake or two in a unit that got clogged. But eventually the case got settled, but you wouldn't think that a slip and fall case had to do with uh, cast iron piping that was old and not repaired. So you never know what can happen in a particular case. It could easily switch and change direction at any time, right? So the other thing that was done was there was a coefficient of friction test. And what that is there's a machine that's used to figure out how slippery the floor is, the floor material. And even if the drain didn't get clogged and the water didn't end up in the bathroom floor, just by virtue of the dry tile was slippery enough that it could have caused somebody to slip anyway. So the bottom line is, when you're constructing a building, you don't use smooth tile for a bathroom, right? Why would you use tile that's smooth or people can slip in an area that has water, right? If a sink drain leak, the water's just going to be dripping down, and next thing you know, your bathroom's going to be flooded, your tile's going to be wet, and it's another slip hazard. Okay? That's the reason why if you go to restaurants or you go to hotels and you go to their restroom, the floor shouldn't be slippery. If it is, then it's already a flaw, right? And some buildings, they pride themselves on, we got nice marble and granite floors, man. We're a five-star hotel. We got marble floors everywhere, walls, flooring, and you go in the bathroom and it's like a five-star hotel. Yeah, they the same marble that was in their lobby is in the bathroom, and it's smooth and it's slippery. Someone can slip. And is that a problem? I think it's a problem. Just wait until somebody slips and gets hurt, then it's going to be a problem. Okay, so just pay attention to your buildings and make sure that everything's repaired, maintained. Um, don't use the lack of money as an excuse. We want people safe. It's all about building safety and protecting people's health. We don't want people to get hurt. We don't want people to die. We don't want people to get injured because of failure to maintain the premises. That's what this webinar is all about. So, Martin, we got any questions? If not, you got any last words before we sign off?
No, that's all the questions. Just making me think about residential property liability. So I'll have to look
Oh,
into some of those.
okay. Well,
We'll
it's
have to
a,
do a webinar on that maybe.
yeah, well, it's the same thing, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks, Lance. Good job.
All right. On behalf of Martin and myself, thank you very much. And we're going to sign off now.